Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Great to meet all of you.
Dr. Marco
Good evening.
and Mr. Rose,
Yes.
who is here for Mr. Bass this evening. Thank you for being willing to do that.
Happy to do it.
Thank
Thank you for having me.
So we'll start with our mission statement. The Frederick County CCAP works in collaboration with students, families, FCPS staff, and the community to advise the Office of Special Education and the Board of Education. The committee will focus on open and honest communication, improving effectiveness and accountability, advocating for appropriate resources, and identifying individual issues that may often be systemic. The committee will work together to put children first. So typically at this point, we move into public comments, but we do not have any public comments this evening. So that means we get to move right into our Q&A discussion. And are you able to put the questions up? Yes, you are. So committee members, thank you to those of you that submitted questions. Patty and I went through, put them into a document, tried to categorize them by what types of questions they were. We probably will not be able to get through all of the questions this evening because there were a number of them. We also submitted a list of who we all are and what our membership role is. And for those of you that submitted your goals of why you joined, we included that in the documents. And you should have all gotten those in your email as well. Okay? Okay.
So I will start by just saying, I shared with Patty that I do have a hard stop at 6:30. However, I am happy to come back another time. Dr. Marco has to leave at 7. So we'll get to what we can and then I'll come back if that's okay. Because you had a lot of questions.
Yes.
Probably more than my interview process.
Well, there's a lot of us, so.
Sure, many interests. I get it. Understand.
So I don't want to read them to you because that just seems silly,
Sure.
but the first group of questions were what I would call big picture questions about the overall system and vision and mission and so forth. So a lot of them fell within this area, and then there's more programmatic questions coming up. So first, why don't you tell us about what your vision is for special education in Frederick County?
Sure. It would help if I started where some of the other questions are and kind of fold it in. Is that okay?
Whatever way you'd like to go.
So I don't get a chance often to talk to people about my history and where I started. I started as a teacher in education 24 years ago at Georgia Forest Elementary, where we had a social emotional program, which is equivalent to PyramID here. And so we did a lot of inclusion of those students to ensure they had access to teaching and learning on grade level. And I think that was my first foray into special education proper, I call it, because to me, good teaching is good teaching. It's just giving students what they need. But I also was a co-teacher. So for my first 2 years of teaching, I shared the classroom with a special educator and we co-taught literally for literacy and for math. And the wonderful thing about that experience is that we are still linked in friendship today, but also professionally really championing the value of co-teaching and getting children as much as you can included in the general education setting. So from there, I mean, I really started training teachers and then I became an assistant principal where again, we had a lot of discrete programs in Montgomery County Public Schools, like, I don't know, 7 or 8 different autism programs, and I've had almost all of them. As a principal, I had a what we call a learning center, which is another autism program, but the students are a little bit more high functioning, so we included them a lot in the general education population. But I also had school community-based programs, which are similar to the Learning for Life here. And so working with the parents, all the children had different needs. I mean, you know, some of them cognitively and physically were just not available for learning. So we spent the day just caring for them and giving them what we could in terms of instruction. We had a curriculum, but often, you know, things got in the way and we couldn't really address we couldn't get to the academics because we needed to support them otherwise. And from there, I became a director of family community engagement, where we spent a lot of time working with special populations. So not just special education, but also working in some of our schools where we consider Title I or have they are impacted by poverty. We also supported English learners as they transitioned in. That office was responsible for the international office. And so we really had to think deeply about what environment we want to create in Montgomery County Public Schools to invite the parents in. From there, I went back to the instruction side and became a director where I supervised principals. So my programs ran anywhere from kindergarten to 12th grade, very similar in nature. So I share that because I think it's important for you to know that I have a wide variety of experiences in special populations in general, and supported the board's special population committee when certain issues arose and tried to help families navigate the best possible, least restrictive environment for their student. I also had a school under me called Stephen Knowles, and so our babies there needed a lot of physical support. It was one of our only schools that had a pool in it because they needed that kind of therapeutic exercise every day. And it was hard, losing our students in that program, when they pass away. So we had to learn how to wrap our arms around parents. And it's hard, each rung is difficult. When you tell a fifth grade family that their student is certificate bound, it takes a certain amount of compassion and empathy to have that conversation. It also takes that same amount of courage to really talk to parents about opportunities you think exist for their children. So I don't think that the idea that special education students are limited, I think is just a mindset. And so for me, a vision is that we have a premier program here for special education students that not only meet their needs, but exceeds what we think they can do. So I know that some of our special education students coming from the Learning Center have gone to college. So I believe that it is possible, and we need people around them who believe the same thing. So for me, my vision is the same for all of Frederick County Public Schools, which is that we provide the best conditions. We ripen those conditions and we provide high quality first instruction service, a continuum of services so that our students can be successful. So our parents feel like they are part of the community and not some ancillary group, but that we are all together working on behalf of our students. And legislation is going to make us do that, whether we want to or not, right? So I want people to want to, and I want to hire people who believe that all of our children can exceed at high levels and are ready to do so. Let's see.
Want me to scroll down a bit out of the big picture?
Let's talk about budget, because a couple of things that I was excited, and I hope you watched the videos, because I called you out because of the recommendations that you had. And so we did take some of those recommendations and put them in the budget, and we hope that our budget gets fully funded. And the audit and the advocacy centers were two really that I called out. I think that it's not wise, fiscally wise, to spend money in different areas while you're going through an audit. You need to understand what the community has to say, what staff has to say, and figure out where we go from there. Rely on some real experts to tell us. I know for a fact that we need to expand our continuum of services. We don't have enough. Everybody has to fit into these neat little boxes, and I think that we can learn something from our neighboring counties, not just Montgomery County, but we can learn from Howard and some others about how we can expand those programs. And I think we are in the process of talking about that. Because what happens is when you put two students in one program and they all have these different profiles, and you have one teacher and maybe 3 SEIAs, it's really hard to address the needs when the needs are so vast, just like a general education classroom, right? So I might pre-assess my students in a math probability, and they're all over the place. So I have to create flexible groupings and then plan for them. Well, we have to think about what's the bandwidth for one program in one school. So I'm hoping that some of the findings and ideas and recommendations from PCG will help us expand our continuum of services. I would also say we have to expand who our service providers are. So there's this notion that whether if you're an English learner, then you belong to the English learner teacher. If you are a special education student, you only belong to the special education student. And I'm just not of that mindset, and neither is the law. We are all service providers as certificated employees. And so I want to expand all of the things that special ed has been doing to our general education teachers, because good instruction is good instruction. And it's good for not just, this strategy isn't just good for special education students. It's good for that low, that student who struggles and has low scores in reading. That same special education strategy can be used for that student as well. So some of that is just creating the opportunities for professional learning, and some of it is just changing mindset about how we think about quality teaching and learning. So we hope that our budget, we set aside a little over $3 million, I believe, for the audit to implement some. Some we may have to take a little bit more time and spend creating some of the recommendations that they have, but I'm excited about what we can do. And I hope wherever you are, you help to support our efforts to fully fund our budget. Sensitive to colleagues' needs. I want to talk about that because I talked about this before with a few board members. I always remember my students and their families, and I love it when I run into them in a store or place. I've run into my kids in Florida, and I'm like, what are you doing here? But it's just such a pleasure when you feel like you leave a legacy wherever you've been. But I want to talk about Rachel for a second, because Rachel was in my school community-based program. Rachel was a student who, her father was white, Amish, and mom was a Latina. And they married, and for some reason had two beautiful children where the dad liked to molest and then withhold food. So Rachel's brother went through before she came to my school. They both were adopted by an African family who had to help them, strap them down at night because they would raid the refrigerator because they weren't used to eating. But Rachel also learned to self-soothe because of the abuse that she had experienced. And so all of us in that room I would get called down because Rachel was having a moment, like we had to put a swimsuit on her to stop her from doing that. And so this isn't just about the colleagues, because we had to train our students who were in the general education program the nature of different disabilities and teach them tolerance. So before that program came to my school, we did a lot of social stories. We did a lot of looking at videos and talking about what difference means and how we honor each person. But for the students in Rachel's class, they had been with her since kindergarten because it's a self-contained program. And so they would spaz every time it happened to Rachel because they would get excited and nervous. And then the teachers would almost get hurt trying to help Rachel keep her from disrobing. So it's a bizarre story if you think about it, but you can only believe it if you experience it. To watch somebody in 5th grade have experienced that, and she became mute because of it. She experienced so much trauma. And so, making the environment so that she could have access to learning when she also has to have mental health support took a lot of teaching tolerance, patience, working with parents and outside social workers to make sure we could protect her, number one, while she was at school, because even though the parents fled and she was a ward of the state until the adoption, she and her brother, they still had a right to know about the IEP. We still had to inform them. And so explaining to people how you manage the adoptive parents and help them with their strategies, how you care for Rachel, help her get out of that, overcome that trauma, so she can have access to learning. She was tall, about 180 pounds, 5'7", 5'8". And when she wanted food, you could not stop her. So staff got hurt. And so I had to help the staff see who Rachel is. Just imagine. That's what empathy is, right? Let me walk a mile in her shoes. To be this young and to have so much trauma have happened to her. Rachel is the reason why I fight for every child. I tell that story when I can because it's an example of the least of these. She had no idea. She didn't deserve for those things to happen to her, but they did. And she deserved a public school, free and appropriate education. And so talking to staff about how we manage dealing with the crisis with her biological parents, but also managing and helping those parents who opened their homes and their hearts to her. And they took them to Africa, exposed them to the world. And by the time Rachel left us, she was talking a little, making sounds. Before, I would greet her every morning. And before, she would just kind of grunt and look at me like, get away from me. But by the end of the year, she was at least able to let me say hello and would acknowledge me with her eyes. So my passion for children runs deep. I could tell you 10 more stories like that. Some of my students who weren't special ed but had severe behavior disorders, how we deal with the families. So for me, this is an opportunity to sort of help Frederick County Public Schools continue their journey of understanding how we repair harm and how we open our minds and our hearts to every student that comes, no matter their profile, and provide their families with the necessary supports to get through.
Just trying to take that all in.
Yeah, yeah. It's a deep story, but it is a story of redemption, but it is a story of deep, how trauma can last on a child for a long time and show up in how they act and interact with us every day. And the lesson is we have to unpack every one of those stories. Every one of those stories, even the ones we saw today. We have to unpack every one of those stories to explore every way and every opportunity we can to provide support.
In our next meeting, I want to hear the rest of your stories, please.
Yeah, yeah,
I really do.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I keep them all in my mind. Rashad, I keep them all in my head. Malachi, the one from before, because it's the reason why I do what I do when I get discouraged about where we are in education. I remember that because that's my why, that's my purpose.
I do that as well.
Yeah.
On those really hard days.
Yes.
I remember a student that I had a really good connection with, and it made a world of difference.
Absolutely.
And that's my go-to.
Mm-hmm.
Like on a day like today, when you hear the news yet again of something that happened, you always have to have that go-to. This is what I keep doing. Sorry.
Yeah.
I felt connected there in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I touched on, I think we need to expand a continuum of services. Why don't we just dig into the cameras?
Sure.
Okay, let's answer that question while Dr. Marco is here and while I'm here. And then I want to talk about exploiting things from other counties, because I think that benchmarking is going to be one of the only ways, given that Supreme Court, that we keep people in education. So let's start with the cameras.
Sure. During my interim status last year for 6 months, in January, shortly after the Department of Justice release, I think anybody that was in Frederick County Public Schools at the time recognizes the settlement some of the issues that surfaced, significant issues that surfaced through that report. We started our special education updates to the Board of Education at every meeting. Some of you may recall those. One of the initial meetings where I was presenting, I believe a board member raised the question, can we explore cameras before the legislation occurs? I said, absolutely, let's do it. And I thought at the time that, and I still do, that this would serve children well and it would serve staff well. So the initial steps I took, and at the meeting, some of you may recall, I said, the one caveat is I need to work closely with our associations. They have to be in agreement to place the cameras in the programs, particularly the programs where students have challenges communicating. So I immediately started down that route. I reached out to the Teachers Association. They actually, surprisingly, were very amenable to the conversation, which I was super pleased with. I reached out to our support employees because these programs also house special ed instructional assistants. Once again, they were open to the conversation. They did put one condition on it. They said, you can reach out to a program, but it has to be voluntary. We want our teachers to be willing to have these cameras in the classrooms. So we reached out to one specialized program, an elementary specialized program, and the reaction from the teachers was, this would make us very uncomfortable, giving the rationale that it wouldn't tell the entire story. It may not give a contextual understanding of what happened in the classroom. So that shut that down. We continued to have the conversations, and then Mr. Bain resurfaced this question, I think, at the last CCAC meeting, which remotivated me to see what we can do in Frederick County Public Schools. So I am starting the conversation. I have returned to our association representatives to start the conversation again. The one question, quite frankly, that I asked them very candidly, if we just do it without your approval or without the volunteer status, what would be your response? I haven't heard a response yet. I do believe March 30th is one of their board meetings that they have with FCTA, and Ms. Dirks, who serves as president, is going to get a response back to me. In the meantime, we've lifted up a very brief survey, and I'll share the questions with you. And this would go to Carroll Manor Elementary School, Deer Crossing Elementary School, Middletown Primary School, Middletown Elementary Schools, TJ Middle, and TJ High School, our expression programs. And the questions are really, really simple. I support the installation of cameras in our classrooms, question one. Actually, it's only one question. I oppose the installation of cameras in our classrooms, and I would consider the installation of cameras in our classrooms would need further information. The one thing, Mr. Bain and I had a conversation on, the one thing that we did not do well is go in and really set a stage for it. And what I mean by that is teachers also have a fear that cameras will serve as an evaluation tool. And the principal at any time can kind of get into the classroom, observe, and use it as an evaluation tool. The standard operating procedure that we would develop moving forward and go out and present to the different schools that I've mentioned would be, if, let's say, I'm a parent of a child with autism that isn't communicating, she comes home with a bruise on her forearm. I reach out to the school and say, how did this bruise occur? How did she receive this injury? It would then spark our SOP in that it would come into the directors of special education, or maybe even the director on the instructional side, removing that. And the director would then observe the video and make a determination if there was any foul play. Now, I can tell you that 99% of the time, Mr. Bain and I talked about it. Teachers and staff members are doing the right thing that they need to do. They're in this business for a reason. But it only takes that 1%. So I'm going to continue to work with the associations and try to get buy-in. I'm going to go out and speak to several of the program staff just to kind of share the vision for it and see where we can go from there. Once again, we're committed to the work, we're committed to the conversations, but we do have to work within the parameters of being a union state where they have a certain voice into their working conditions and some things need to be negotiated. So those are kind of forecasting where we're going to move forward in the coming months, and I'm hopeful we'll get a positive response from FCTA and from our Support Employees Association, from our staff members, and I think we can do it. Not going to make any promises this evening. My statement in January was that the reality is I need to work closely with the associations, and that is the reality. But I'm committed to doing the work and seeing where we can go with it. And I do see some advantages of having cameras in the classroom. The other really, really important point that I don't want to miss, some of the narrative coming out of the classroom when we approached those employees, if you do it, I will leave the program. And a real reality of where we are as a school system is we're having difficulties staffing our specialized programs for a variety of reasons. We're seeing behaviors that we didn't see 5 or 10 years ago. And quite frankly, our staff is scared to death after what came out of the Department of Justice. So they are readily saying, no, I'm not going to put myself in that situation where something punitive can happen to me. So there are a lot of balls in the air right now. We're committed to continue to look into it and see the possibilities. Mr. Bain, I don't know if you want to, this might be a good time for you to give an update of where legislation. You were very informative for me. So kind of if you could briefly, because I know Dr. Dyson has to leave, kind of share why it came off legislation, because I do know, well, I'm going to let you tell. 2 things that I'd really like you to highlight is, one, some of the political dynamics, and then how MSEA started to transform, if you would, please.
Sure, yeah. So I've worked closely with an advocate, Lori, from the Howard County area that's been advocating for the cameras. So we put the bill across the House multiple times, and it finally passed the House the last 2 years. But both times that it's passed the House, it ends up on Paul Pinsky, Senator's desk, and he's a former teacher. And plain and simple, he probably doesn't get elected if he doesn't have the teachers union behind his back. So he's very hesitant to even let it see a vote, and he hasn't let it see a vote. So it is not met the floor for a vote. The common consensus is there is a belief that it would eventually pass if it got the vote, but it doesn't ever get the vote. So Senator Pinsky has the right to choose whether to put it out there or not, and that's where that ended the last 2 years. But it has made progress in the fact that it made it to the floor in the House, because for a while it didn't make it to the floor in the House. And then it did pass in the House, so that was a big step forward. And again, the belief in both being there. The teachers union has also transformed a little bit, like Dr. Marco was mentioning. So they originally had a significant stance against the bill. And this past year, actually maybe a year back, 2022, was the first year that they didn't have a letter opposing the bill. So they did write a letter in, but it was non-determinate. They didn't oppose or approve the bill, basically, is what the letter was last year. So that was hopefully another positive step forward. As far as
No, you hit the salient points.
With your update that you had today, I would want to just sneak in a comment though on the survey, and I'll maybe we can work together on this. I would recommend expanding the question for the negative side, for anyone that says, I deny the cameras, and give some leading answers, but the 4 or 5 obvious answers on why, so that we can get some real tangible data that says, you know, if one of them says, I'm feared of prosecution, or one of them says, I'm feared the administrator will watch my teaching habits, or, you know, the obvious answers first, and then another answer that they can, that way we can collect that data and know, okay, here's the main topic that we really need to address with them to get this over the hump. Because as I mentioned before, I think if they really first, like you said, I think 99% of the time that camera will get pulled, it'll be in the favor of the teacher. I think we'll have teachers that instead of being accused wrongly will be, you know, shown that they were doing what they were supposed to be doing, because plain and simple, we have children, my son included, that, you know, they can be clumsy, they can get bruises, they can fall off, you know, equipment, they can, and he can't tell me what happens when he gets home. And so having the camera be his voice can be helpful, but I'm, you know, I'm in strong belief that the majority of the time that camera gets pulled, the teacher will be vindicated and their name will be cleared, and as long as it's only used for that purpose. And even if, and one of the things that got added in the state bill, because they've massaged that bill year after year after year in the state process, one of the things that got changed, you know, recently was to be very specific in the language that even if a camera gets pulled, let's say an incident occurs, Ashton has a bruise, I ask for the camera to get pulled, they pull that video, they're watching that video, they see the instance of when Ashton got bruised. If they saw something that else occurred during that moment, it still can't even be used for that purpose. To be extremely explicit, when that camera gets pulled, it gets used for this purpose and this purpose only. Even if we see something else during that camera pull, it is non-valid for that.
That's a great point.
Yeah, some preemptive, like you were talking about the VSOP, some sharing of what that could look like, what other counties have done and said, this is what it's for, this is not what it's for, it's not there to be monitored. That might help with some of those surveys as well. And we also have some other, like Next Steps program has cameras in that classroom. I was there for a while, and it was in benefit of the teacher for it to be there. It's very important for that. So I wonder if there's some sharing amongst areas within our county or outside the county where we have used that and they are positive for both the teachers and the students situation.
And the last,
Go ahead.
I wanted to say, just because I know Dr. Dyson has to leave, I don't know if you're familiar with the situation that occurred at Carroll Manor between 2017 and 2019, because it was obviously before your time, but we had a teacher that was removed from there because of accusations of abuse by the aides that were in the classroom, and I've spoken with all those aides, and they seem to have very credible stories that, you know, kids were literally being threatened to be put in the refrigerator, and these are sensory challenged children, and significant allegations of abuse. That teacher is also a football coach and is, you know, with kids in all sorts of other programs, and he could be a wonderful person for all we know. And his name is trashed in this community. I mean, I can tell you personally that in the large majority of people that I know, his name is not held highly. And he's currently still employed at CPS. So that camera would have either cleared his name, and, you know, we might have a great person that his name has been trashed in this area, or we also might have a child abuser that's still employed at CPS, and that camera would solve that problem.
And I know Dr. Dyson's leaving, but I do want to say to Dr. Dyson in this group, there could not have been a better champion for cameras in this school district and statewide than Mr. Bain. He has been a real advocate for it, and I certainly appreciated watching his work, so thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
If I could, for just to close my section out, I want to talk about what we can learn from other counties. One of the things that we've implemented already, we signed an open contract for a special education teacher today who will be at Urbana High School. We did about, we had 15 today, where we did open contracts, and just like the athletes, we did a signing day for them, and it was amazing. And you may think, oh, that's nice and cute, but what we learned from other districts is that they get the people first. And so when we looked at just in general hiring practices, they couldn't hire early because we needed to manage our excess process. So that was done and finished like maybe a month ago. And now it's just open season. So we were able to grab all of these nice students, some who are interning in our buildings already and are able to stay where they are. And we were able to celebrate them today. Some are coming to us from Montgomery County. Some of them are coming to, I said, don't tell your principal now. Some are coming from other places and states, Baltimore City, Baltimore County. So we are able to celebrate them, and that's one of our strategies, is to make sure our internal processes allows us to understand the count, right? We know we're the fastest growing district in the state. And so we have to understand what that means in terms of how many teachers we're going to need, whether it's special education or general education, and be able to grab folks early. So we have people who graduated from Hood or will graduate, Towson, the Mount, I mean, from everywhere, Delaware. And so it was nice to celebrate them today. That is one strategy. As we benchmarked with other counties, we saw people were hiring really early. And so this year we had the opportunity to do the same. And so I knew that that was an interest of many of our board members. It was also the interest of some of our interns who end up getting offers way early from neighboring counties, whether for special ed or whatever, but they were getting offers in March and we weren't doing it until May, June. So that's just one of the ways we've been trying to look at in terms of continuum of services. We have Dr. Mason working with us, looking at the discrete programs, but also she has contacts at the state level in Prince George's County, Montgomery, and a few other counties where she can help us figure out how we expand our continuum of services. So that we can best meet the needs of students. So those are just a few, but we remain open. Again, I don't hang my whole hat on the audit, but I do think they've done a great job of trying to get as many voices as they can and come to us with a broader perspective. This is what happens when a county grows. You have to increase the services that you provide. And so we want to do that in a thoughtful and strategic way. I want to thank you for this time tonight. It was so wonderful. I hope you invite me back. I mean, questions are the questions, right? This is the work. This is our work, and you should know it because you're our partners in that work. And so I appreciate your time. And whenever you're ready, schedule willing, I'm willing to come back. Okay? All right. Thank you all so much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
No, I think that, I mean, I guess that hot button one.
Do you want me to go back to it? She's on now.
I know.
Do you want me to put it back
No,
up?
that's okay. Yeah.
Do
You
want
got him
Dr.
for another
Marco
20
to
minutes,
ask
so-
questions, or do you want to move through? Do you have more questions for Dr. Marco? For that?
Did you prep to answer these, Dr. Marco?
What's that?
Did you prep to answer these, or is
I did not prepare. I prepared for the camera one, but I didn't prepare for the other ones.
One thing that we've done in the past, and we were part of it at that time, was hosting like a parent to work with our administrators. I think,
Which was amazing.
yeah, and I think we should try to do that again. Support from either you or Dr. Dyson, where we could solicit a panel of 5 to 6 parents, I think it's what we did before, and be invited to those administrator, whoever they are, be invited. We prepared questions for those who weren't part of that. We prepared, questions for the panelists, and it was, I think I was on it, a couple of CPAC members, Shauna was on it, Bob, who was part of Friendsburg. So there was a wide variety of both parents with disabilities, a wide variety of disabilities, where it was a very candid conversation where we really just sat up front. There was I think it was all principals at the time, and it was a whole principal meeting, and we were up there just to answer very candid questions. I remember some of the questions are like, what should you tell us that we might not know about you? And off the spot, I was like, I haven't slept in 16 years. Like, I haven't. and I was being somewhat funny. I mean, I was being truthful, but it was funny. And I've had principals come up to me years after that and say things like, I didn't even think about that. I hadn't thought about that. So I think it's probably time for us
A
to do it again.
refresh.
You did a great job kind of hosting and pushing and leading and getting us in on that. So
It was a powerful conversation, and I really thought it helped our administrators. Some of our administrators are great at understanding our students' needs and some of the challenges parents face. But some, as you've probably encountered, and I've worked now in 2 districts, they just don't have that soft side leadership skills to help parents navigate the IEP process and special education. So I would be very open to that. I thought it was an effective approach.
I would touch on 3 of the other questions that were on that list that I think, between you and Dean could potentially offer some opinions if you've already talked about it with the board meetings and such. One would be, because it's readily talked about in this room, is the buses. So we have a lot of difficulty with special need transportation and buses. Have you heard much about this at board meetings, or has it been a topic that has been brought to your attention at all?
I've heard it through Mrs. Stifler, who is now serving as our coordinator for non-public. And 2 factors that play into it is there aren't a lot of non-publics available, and they're being very selective, and then they're not close by in many situations. I did have a conversation last spring with Shepherd Pratt about lifting up a non-public in Frederick. Our 2 things that would have to come into existence. One is finding the space, and 2 is finding the funding. I would love to reach out to Carol in Washington County and at least start the conversation, because I can only think of one in Washington County where there's in Troy and Linda. I've been away from it for a while. But there's one in Washington County, but pretty much everyone's flowing through on 70 and 270 to get to our non-public. So that's a conversation. It's going to require a lot of conversation and work, but it's probably time, because we do have students on buses for 3 hours a day round trip.
What they're referring to is that unfortunately there's some kids in our specialized programs, not non-public, that still have
Got it.
monthly bus rides. And so they have requested that we as a district reconsider one of our regulations regarding how long students should be on transportation that has a disability.
So you're asking more in-county programs.
So I think your answer actually does help, though. I do personally. So, for instance, my son Ashton, I'm up here North Frederick, luckily close to TJ Middle and TJ High. So once he gets there, because he's in an expression program, I'll be less than a mile away. Right now, he goes to Carroll Manor. So, and that bus would pick him up about 7:45. I don't let that happen. I drive him, and doesn't get him there until 9 o'clock. And then on the way home, he doesn't get home until after 5, which I can't do both ways. And so that's just not fair to a child to put him on a bus that early in the morning, and then not even be home until dinner time, and then bedtime and done, and it's over. And so it's extremely difficult. And I know that I've heard that same story from a lot of other parents that their bus rides are that long too. And it's obviously because they're not district kids, so the bus has to hop all over the place before it gets to where it's going. And so if you had another school, but I can also tell you that there was a point where I thought about taking my son, starting that process to non-public. And the main reason I did not even explore it was because I wasn't going to let him drive down to Rockville on a bus every day. It just wasn't going to happen, and that wasn't an option. So I do think if you brought a program like that in-house, I don't know that at this point I'm more content with where Action is, but I think you would end up, that would semi-serve. I think it would also pull from the population, reduce some of that population in some of the schools, maybe reducing bus times. Preferably though, I'd rather address also the current in public bus transportation and adding a new program locally in the public schools.
Your comments are timely. Today in our cabinet meeting, we were talking about redistricting with the addition to Crestwood, which will shift students around. And the question I kept asking, where are we gonna have space to expand our continuum of services for expressions and learning for life and pyramid, because they're busting at the seams. They're busting at the seams, so we need to find space. And then Mr. Rose and I have had this conversation. We really have a space crisis in Frederick County. So we're gonna have to start thinking outside the box as to how we create more space within our schools. That's work that's in front of us. And then I think it's on, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Rose, but I think it's very much on our board's mind. And I know it's on Dr. Dyson's mind as well.
The other thing I heard you say too is not just, I think there's been some loopholes found. I think we need to be careful with loopholes based on what we learned from the DOJ. Is that, yes, your son's probably only on the bus for an hour and 15 minutes, but they bring him to another elementary school where he waits another 45 minutes just because he's not technically on the bus. His school day is expanding. You're not the only parent that has expressed that, for example. So that loophole, if he wasn't really on the bus, we don't really want to bring that up. We'd like to solve the loophole problem so that it doesn't become an issue. We prefer Frederick County to stay out of the news for all bad news things going forward too.
I'm with you. And the other, this is the largest county in the state of Maryland.
Land-wise, yeah.
Land-wise, it creates some issues, but.
Yeah, I think a centralized Ballinger area, something towards Crestwood, something closer to the city would help, because then it would allow you to district a little better. Because right now, anyone on the north side of Frederick, any of the special needs buses are just all over the place before they end up all the way on the east side or all the way on the south side, all the way on the west side, all the way on the south side between Middletown and Carroll Manor.
Well, that's we have space in Brunswick and Catoctin, our furthest out. And
just so you know, it is a topic of discussion among the board. So there's a lot of discussion around special education, and the busing issue is one of those items. So it's not on the back burner. It's definitely a point of discussion.
I think that's the largest mindset shift, though, that we have to think about, is that there's nothing saying that you can have a specialized program at your home school, and it doesn't mean that you have multiple classes. You could have one class to serve the needs of that one school, considerations like that, and then the staff continue to get the intensive training and supports through itinerant staff or dedicated staff to that program. I think that's one of the trade-offs I've had in other districts, that you have less classrooms and it wasn't a group of programs.
And that was more of the Washington County model. Most of the schools had those small
In their home school.
in their home schools.
Yeah, true. I think you'd also say that expansion of co-teaching in the elementary level would also solve a lot of those issues. I think a lot of our students who would go into specialized programs in elementary school, had they been in a co-teaching situation where they were able to have that attention, that may solve some of that as well. Not necessarily for every child. Some of them do need them to go to the classroom. However, it would solve a lot of that. I think we need some consideration in co-teaching, and it solves a lot of issues at the same time.
I'm really excited. We are lifting up a project manager through grant funding, should be posted any day now, where we're going to take a hard evaluation of our co-teaching throughout the district, because I think it's really uneven in implementation. And I'm a former special ed teacher, and I can remember going from one classroom to another classroom. I was used differently. It was usually tailored towards the personality of the teacher in the classroom and kind of their needs. So I'm really looking to lift up a universal professional learning for our co-teachers moving forward. So not every school looks different, and resources are not unevenly implemented, which I think is an issue for us in Frederick County. And the other piece that Dr. Dyson spoke to, and this is a a culture we have to address is if I'm a student with a disability, the special ed teachers owns me. And if Dean is a regular ed student or general ed student, the general ed teacher, those silos have to come down. It has to be, and I don't know if you've experienced that, but I've seen it in some situations, not all situations, where it's all of our jobs to lift up every student regardless of who they are. So I'm excited about the co-teaching moving forward. I think that'll bring a lot of promise, that we can effectively provide a quality instruction in the general education classroom.
Is that project manager hired or is it
And it's going to be posted very shortly.
There's some key pieces, and Dr. Dyson was talking about tolerance. I'm not quite sure who she's referring to, students' tolerance or teachers. And so I have my own, I don't have children with disabilities, but I've experienced interacting with those who do. And so that tolerance level mindset is a key piece, super hard. But when you're trying to change direction, that's going to be a huge element, I think, as far as working with the teachers and students that, you know, just because you're different doesn't mean I need to treat you differently. We should all be respectful of one another, and that starts with your teachers and works to the students. So, yeah, I've experienced this a few times with teachers looking differently with students who are in their classrooms. So I think that's huge, but that mindset element that Dr. Dyson spoke about, that's a huge thing to tackle. And I understand that during a workforce crisis, when you're trying to get people and hold on to people, at the same time, holding on to people who aren't doing the right things is just gonna always hold you back. So I don't know how,
Well,
that goes further, but that's key.
well, culture trumps strategy every time.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard that quote, and I believe that as well. It's not my quote. I think it's Bill Daggett's quote. But with the retention of teachers, in my mindset, has shifted so much in the past 20 years into this. If I'll give you an example, when I was a principal a long time ago, if I had a new teacher that I did not think was effective, I would have the conversation about moving that teacher out of the school mid-year, first year. We don't have the luxury of doing that anymore. We're going to have to take the less than average teacher and make them a better teacher, because it's not like we can say, you know what, you just don't fit the model that I'm looking for in classrooms. So we have to shift our mindset there, and we have to grow our teachers however they come to us and get them prepared to do the job. And that's something that's certainly on my mind right now as we hire teachers, is how can we grow them and make them as effective as possible. And part of that is shifting and ensuring their mindset is that every child, we believe in them, we're going to support them, and we're unified in that approach.
One powerful thing that's happening across the nation is getting the right teaching experts in a co-teaching setting. It is not always a general education teacher and a special education teacher. It's often two general educators who perhaps may have expertise in the science of reading. Something coming down the pike, which would help to eliminate that's your child's student
Correct.
versus my student.
I appreciate co-teaching, and I appreciate the movement towards we're all responsible. I'm gonna play devil's advocate for just a minute.
Sure.
My concern, where I can see it slip away from us, is if we're all responsible and you have a training that I don't have, I want to make sure my kid's getting the training specific that you have been trained in. And so when a goal is written and it says who's responsible and you're listing off, I'm concerned. I just want to make sure that the child is getting the instruction or the method or the strategy that is intended from the person who's training.
Valid point. It's like anything else. We have to build the guardrails around it as well. to ensure that we don't fall into the traps. That's a very valid point.
My observation is just that it seems that, especially everyone in this room, obviously, has all of these very valid points and is ready to support students and families with whatever they need. As you can hear from Dr. Dyson and Mr. Miller, that everybody is saying all the right things, and it sounds really good. And I guess my only concern is, not being in FCPS currently, are all of this mission and all of this really important, valuable information that was even just shared in this short time tonight, is that shared in a big room with every single person that works at FCPS? The lunch people, I mean, the bus drivers, everyone there to hear this, because what was being said is really, really important, and it's moving and it's powerful, and I feel like it's empowering. But if 7 people hear it over here and 10 people hear it back here and 9 people over here, and then that school didn't get to come, that's the reason why there's not a cohesiveness in Frederick County Public Schools. And with all of this site management, where people get to decide how they're going to run their school, instead of having it be a very cohesive mindset, I think that that's where we come into all the difficulties. Because everything that we're hearing here tonight, there should be no reason why things can't be moving forward in a very positive manner, and why students, teachers, and families aren't feeling supported. Because by what's being said, everybody should feel that way. Everybody should be working towards this one goal, but I don't know if everyone's getting the same information to be able to move in that direction. And I think that that may be one of the most valuable things that need to be taken away, that every single person involved in the school system needs to hear exactly what you're saying, and what Dr. Dyson is saying, so that they can also have that same feeling of changing the mindset, forward movement, and feeling heard and supported, I guess. And I wouldn't even think of it as special ed. I think that is so many challenges in every single family, every single student's life, whether it be trauma, difficulty in a math or English. I feel like everyone can get benefit from having this overall encompassing circle of support. Like you're saying, special ed or general teachers, picking the students and supporting them. If everybody is working together for students, everyone is going to come out and be benefited from it. So just like she was saying about training, why isn't everyone trained in everything to support everyone? And I know that those are all big things and cost money and time and all of those really things, but I think that it's important to be looking in that direction to provide that support for everyone in order to accomplish this big goal. Because if, just like you said, you could be standing here with all the money, but if half of the school is not going to buy into this mindset, all of us are just here, keep doing the same thing, and half of the people are going to work really, really hard. And the other half of people are like, I'm not going to do that. There does have to become some accountability. But if everyone is given the same option on the same level playing field of having the right information, hearing these stories, hearing how well things can work and how well people want to work together, I just think that would be at a whole different trajectory, and maybe shorten the length of time it's going to be to get there. So kind of maybe to keep that in mind as part of the working system, that it really, everybody has to be able to be on the same page.
Well, you touched on some things that I believe strongly in, and I'm going to say it even if I have the vice president of the board here. This is my 9th year in Frederick County in one block. Previously, I started as a special ed teacher and assistant principal in Frederick, then I left. When I was in Frederick County during that duration, site-based management was king. Principals were given a lot of autonomy. Now the research has come back now that site-based management is not the best approach. Folks need to have freedom within fences. So over the past 9 years, I've been fighting this culture of site-based management. And when you become a larger system and you want to have accountability, you can't necessarily have a site-based management. You become a system of schools rather than a school system. So we're fighting that narrative. My second point is we just reinstituted where special education is going to have an hour to a 90-minute block with principals every time we meet with them. And that's going to demonstrate to them the priority and the messaging on what you're hearing this evening. So they're going to start hearing it. And then we need to go broader, much like you said, it needs to be the food nutrition services worker. It needs to be the bus driver. It needs to be the instructional. It has to spread. But there are only two ways you can do that. Make it a priority, which I believe Dr. Dyson's ready to do, and then spend the time and energy to get in front of them. We have a lot of work to do in that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you we're anywhere near being perfect, but we're committed to the work. And that's the starting point. But I agree with your assessment.
And I'm glad he said that in front of me, because coming from the business world, this is something that the corporate America went through a few decades ago, the silo theory, all that. And they found out pretty quickly that autonomy can actually be a bad thing because it defeats a culture among an organization. And I think that's what I love hearing now is there is a hyper focus on culture. We're going to have a systemic culture here that focuses, that's why they say every child, every day. We're going to have a systemic focus on that type of culture of supporting our students, supporting our staff at every single level so that we can provide a continuum of services regardless of where your child is in this county. Yes, there was always that thinking about the autonomy because an elementary school in Thurmont versus an elementary school in downtown Frederick might have a different constituency, might have different challenges. That's all well and good, but they still have to have the same culture. Those staff people have to feel just as supported, and those students and those families need to know they're receiving exactly the same services that they would get regardless of wherever you walk in. I always use simplistic. If you walk into McDonald's across this country, the sign wouldn't have to be there. You're in McDonald's. And that's the way corporate world, there may be some autonomy. They may have the McRib, the other place doesn't. But you give some autonomy to your school-based leadership to address the things that are unique to their community. But there has to be a culture within the system that everyone feels supported. And no matter where those students go, they're going to get the same education, the same passion that they would get anywhere else in this county. And that's a challenge. That's a challenge. I've said that all along. There's a challenge in Frederick County when we deal with rural, suburban, and urban schools. That's a challenge, I think. That was just the way things were done. It wasn't, I don't like looking backwards. I like to look forwards. But that's just the way things are done, and we've learned a lot from that. And I think now I'm excited about the focus that we have on our culture and what that means to our retention and what that means to our student and family satisfaction.
Any other questions? So I can avoid getting in trouble with the two girls in my life at home who control me.
You said the project manager will be posted soon. You have
Within the next 2 weeks, it should be. In fact, I asked that question, where are we last week? We have put together the job description, and I'm super excited about that, and I think we get some really strong candidates. The only thing that I won't do at this point is pull a teacher out of a school because we can't afford to do that right now. And while this is a priority, having excellent teachers in front of our children every day is a big. Thank you so much for the work you do in this group. It doesn't go unnoticed, and we appreciate your advocacy. And if you have questions, or if you want to ask me another question that you think about this evening or next week, email me, call me. My door is open. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we are an hour and 5 minutes into our meeting. We have a lot to do. So I'm just warning you, there might be a request for extension by somebody. But anyway, first thing we need to do is we had notes from our January meeting that we did not have quorum last time, so we could not accept those meeting notes. So, everybody's read over the notes. Anybody have any questions or problems with them? Need some changes? Why is she holding her brain?
Sorry, it was cultural day, so like I'm Native American, so it's just weird.
Oh, okay. Oh, no, I didn't mean it for that. I thought something was really wrong.
That's like holding on to
Hold
Trying to
on.
restrain herself from.
What's in your notes that's not bad?
Motion to accept the notes.
Yes, I'm very excited about this.
So did I just hear Mr. Bailey?
Motion to accept.
Yes. Anybody second?
Do you have, since there's two, do you have to do them separately? Or you
Yes,
just taking-
I'm doing them separately.
Okay, thank you.
That was January
That's
23rd,
true.
right?
January.
That was January. Everybody accepts, right? So I can. Okay, now we have our notes from the February meeting.
Motion to accept the notes.
All in favor? Wow.
So that then takes us to the CCAC subcommittee
Subcommittee,
update. So membership committee, Marlena, you're up.
Okay, so we have agreed on the updated membership application. It's digital. I sent out the forms to Megan to get put on the socials, on Facebook, on the Find Out First, on the website, on the Partners for Success. So we can start getting applications, and then because it's all digital, all the responses are going to go straight to a spreadsheet. That way, it's very easy to keep track of who's applied, what positions, are they parents, are they students, are they community members? So like now with the paper application, if I want to say, oh, Marlena quit, we have to get a new staff member. I have to look through 50 applications to find the staff member. This way, with the Excel sheet, I can just click a little drop down and it'll show me all the staff applications. So that makes it, much easier for my teachers to sort. And then also, if, someone steps over as membership committee chair, it is all very easily accessible. So I've emailed everyone who's up for renewal. As of right now, everyone has said they're interested in renewing. So at this point, we will have 5 vacancies for the upcoming membership unless someone else steps down who's not scheduled for renewal. So that will be the 3 student vacancies we have. It will be 1 staff and 1 parent. Those are the current as of right now, but that is always subject to change. Yes, because we had 2 folks step down before the last meeting, and we never received.
Right. But we replaced Shauna and,
those 2. Yeah,
Michelle,
so
they
we
were
replaced them,
replaced.
but we had 2 more step down.
well, we do have a few more to talk, people who have not been to many meetings, any meetings. So we do have them to discuss, because we might have more of them. But with the great new system, that's gonna be good. Yeah, and I think, we have the attendance record updated, and Carrie, you're doing it tonight, right?
Yeah, and I will send, I have it right now.
Yeah, okay.
I can also, Marlena, make sure you have access to that page where you can see all of the applicants. I haven't gone back and updated all of the ones. So you can see those who missed more than 2 or 3 consecutive meetings. So the protocol in our bylaws is if you need more than, if you miss more than 3 consecutive meetings, then it's brought to the membership team to determine should we, there may have been extenuating circumstances, but in general, we would then notify them that they were maybe just distinctly in their time on the board, saying that right. We could either replace them that or open it for next year. I think the membership committee could look at it first, but it's 3 consecutive is where how it's been written. But there's always
that can be amended?
Not necessarily amended, but so like if they miss 3 and the team came together to discuss it, you might decide, okay, like
5 or 6 because my husband and my daughter were in a car accident.
so we kept her on board.
My daughter was in the hospital and then COVID hit. So
It was an
I was,
extenuator.
yeah, I missed many meetings and I think actually I was supposed to be up for re-enrollment and they did finish the year, so let me do 1 more year. I don't know if that was fully discussed, but I'm assuming it was in some way.
Based on what I've
Rather than
been looking at, there seems to be a few people that probably are, and I don't know what they've said when you asked for renewal, but there probably are a few people on that list who have kind of discontinued service in general, but haven't officially told us. So we need to reach out to them to say, I'm still planning on being part of this. Let me get that updated for you.
I think it was part of our discussion last year when we did membership, and I think that it was really clear why we put the agenda and stuff on there, so people knew the expectation. And before they were applying, so they would know what they were gonna be committing to. I think that was a big discussion here.
And that's something like, it's a mandatory like checkbox on the new application. Like you have to say, I understand this is your commitment, this is the meeting, like we put pretty much all the bylaws on the application. And it's like a mandatory, they have to have this. I mean, they may not actually read it, at least we can come back and say, hey, we told you this, you said you read it.
Do you want me to include the form on the notes, because they get posted to the board notes? I don't want to text it out.
I'm sorry.
Yep, yes, that takes us to communications.
I touched base with members, last month about things we had conference, we had a really good meeting at our ad hoc meeting, and then I dropped the ball on you guys. But we've gotten several things posted, thank you, Rachel, for sending things. And they're very good at posting things, it pops up all the time, but partnership success, we posted, I'm like, oh, okay, take that. And then we are gearing up for the resource fair, and I want to thank you, I got your link, how that put in my spam, found it this morning, so I'm posting that, making sure it's on the website. That's pretty much our only update right now. We'll have better ones for you.
Just wanted to check, you have this one.
Yes, and I sent that to you here, because I do not remember who all I sent it to previously, so that we can have it out. Thank you so much for
What do you mean by that?
We sent out the PDF and the flyer, in English, to the city, and we now have it in Spanish also.
And when should we get that? I'll find out first.
Yeah, whenever you send it to me, I can send it out.
All right.
Okay, so, thank you to my membership committee who's been helping me stay on track and getting up to date on the last couple months. So, again, officially, April 22nd, 12 to 2 at the Rock Creek School. Is 12 to 10, geez, I can't even read it. I'm reading it. April 22nd from 10 to 2. Sorry about that. We currently have 30 vendors registered and ready to participate. We will be following up with them in the next 2 weeks to encourage their videos. Some of them have already started sending some in, so that we can get some of those posted. The Friends group, I talked with Evan Routzen for some time, and they've decided that this year, because they just had an event last weekend on 321, and they have another walk coming up in September, October. They're gonna kind of hold back on that, but they may have sent Linda and Troy some questions about other opportunities that they were willing to bring to our fair. Nothing? All right, okay, I'll follow up with Evan. He had mentioned they kind of have like bouncy houses and pony type things available and on hold, but we don't know what the rules are for, Frederick County School properties, rules of having those types of things, so you can ask. More of a, just to make the event more fun, not necessarily to do it, but they would sponsor it, we would co-sponsor with them. And for those of you who don't know who Friends are, it's the Down syndrome local group that started probably 15, 20 years ago. A good group of people that have just kept the organization going. They do a lot of things. They will also be donating all of the tables for us to sign up, or to have our vendors sitting at. They usually help come set up and sit things down. They usually donate money towards food. Lots of good ideas, but because of this year being a little bit rushed, they wanted to pull back on that regardless, and they were going to make sure they take over. But for next year, we were just trying to brainstorm some ideas on how to make it even cooler and bigger and better. And they usually bring in the following, so we will help get our numbers up too. Rachel, that'll have big numbers. These people all count towards stuff, and it's a lot of fun. So everything's available in the Google Drive. You just go into Google and plug into your drive.google.com and just type in resource fair. You can pop up all the things that we have related. You can look at what some of the vendors are. So if you don't see a vendor on there that you think should be and you want to still forward them those invitations, please do.
I believe Rory, the author, has been paid and everything.
Oh, cool.
Infants and Toddlers is getting 20 more books for her to sign and give away. So she will be there doing her awesome little reading of her new book. So it's great.
Awesome.
Updates on, I think vendors, I was with two vendors, people involved with vendors this weekend.
Cool.
At the Special Olympics, and so Special Olympics, and they have another event that day.
Okay.
So they want to stay on the list for next year,
Yeah,
but because of the change of date, they're unable to share.
no problem. Special Olympics and during
Dreams Pursuit.
I think
Yeah.
people can send in like a video or something, you know?
I can follow up with that.
Yeah, I'll see what they said on here too. They may have responded to me.
Okay.
And I never take anyone off the list unless they ask me to take
They
them off the
wanted to
list.
make sure that they were on.
I keep the list growing in hopes, and we have had people come back just a couple of years and then come later. So unless they specifically say eliminate me, I never.
So they're like,
make
make sure we're new on.
Contacts and things like that. But no, I will not take them off. But I
Okay,
can say that they follow up with that. So thank you. And I do still need some volunteers. We do have people setting up. Usually what we do is we'll set up the night before from like 5 to 6. The group of friends are usually with us. And it's, when I say set up, I mean just helping them unload the tables, me bossing you around where the tables, and then I'll finish kind of the rest of it, setting up where people go. With 30 vendors, we're gonna have to go over to the school and look at it again and check the weather and different things. Last year, we set up in the cafeteria, but we also thought that if the weather's good, we will let it kind of flow out into the courtyard for those of you who have not been in.
Yeah, no, I believe we have the whole school pretty much.
I think
We're
we do
allowed
too.
to use the corridor part of it, but, you know,
Yeah.
it's a really cute park area, no
Yeah.
kids can skate, whatever. And then we have the cafeteria and I think some of the outside as well.
Let me double check on the gym, because I don't know if we reserved that, because
I
we share
think
that
I-
with Parks and Rec, but sometimes we do.
I think I reserved it all of it.
So.
I don't know if I did it right though,
So
but I
I'm
can
not
double
sure yet
check.
what we want to do with it. We wanted to see how many vendors we end up with and where we go. So last year, we only had about 19 vendors. We opted to not put it in the gym because it made it look really small. And it was actually pretty cool to be in the cafeteria area. It worked, it flowed really well, but that was with 19, now we have 30. So we'll either flow into the courtyard or maybe do the hallways. We've done all kinds of things in the past. Yeah. Yeah, so we're gonna go, our team will go in there, and we'll go meet with Katie and Rick, who's the custodian, who always helps us set things up, but okay. Friday night, we usually go around 5, we can confirm those dates, 5 or 6. We try not to ruin everyone's Friday nights, we monopolize everyone's Friday nights, and it's pretty quick. And then Saturday morning, I mean, people there starting at 8 to help us, and I can send out a sign up list. But we need people to come in, basically help the vendors dress down. What I do too is I put the tables, so we'll all have a map, and we'll be able to hand the map to them and be like, okay, go find your table, set up, and I'll put their names on the tables too. So it'll be easy for them to find. But it's nice for us to have kind of greeters with the vendors who can help and get ready to go. And then I'll need sign up for people to greet families as they come in and hand things out. And then having someone else staff, or to be staffing at the table too, and staff that table. So I need to get that out to you guys sooner than later. So I'll send an email out this week to just kind of get some volunteers, make sure we're slotted. Thank you. Awesome.
So the one that says 2023 resource fair sign up, that's not it.
Might be. Maybe I already created it.
I think they're all over the place. I think you copied it from last year because there's some
Yeah,
people.
it's probably not ready.
Last
Okay.
year from Barn Round.
Okay, well, that's all. We'll look for that.
yeah, and it says-
nicely.
We'll update that yet. I'll need to double check on that one, but in terms of like the vendor list, you should be able to see like, signed up.
Yes.
Do that.
Okay.
That's
Yes.
that's here.
I know,
Yeah.
maybe it was a January one, maybe we talked about. But we had talked about the possibility of having tablets or something to do the,
Yes.
survey
The survey.
on.
Yes.
We think we have, somebody who's gonna bring two laptops. We'll bring two laptops to do that. So we'll set up, so what I'm thinking is that on the CCAC table, we'll have some space for us just to do our spiel, but then either next to it, maybe a separate table near it, so they can then sit down and finish it. We can set those two tables up together.
Also,
Right.
if we were.
Yeah, right where the food is.
If we're not
There
doing
you go.
a, physical form for membership anymore, it might be smart to do like a QR code when you come in, and you guys are using the cards, right, I'll take a QR form, so even if they close out of it on their phone.
So what I heard Meg say is she's gonna create the QR code to get that set up and ready and gonna print it out for us, so we can tell people to scan when we check in. Actually, I'm gonna add that to this, but thank you, it's good point. That was helpful.
Kara, did you guys think about giving like a raffle? I thought we talked about this last time, like having an award and giving raffle tickets out to every family that fills out the survey.
Yeah, we were gonna put them, so it would be a raffle, so not every, they get a raffle ticket for everyone, and then we need donations to fund, we can't pull that from our grant, so we would need, you don't have to say it out loud now, but usually like a $25 gift card or something like that, but we could solicit some, either we can go beg places for the gift card, or someone might wanna donate to get a gift card, but we can work that out, that's definitely an idea to encourage them to do the survey. That way they'll do it quickly and make sure we get some more numbers up and get some good parent feedback through that too.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Yeah, I believe we have a date for the retreat.
That is a great question. We have not, but can we pick a date for the retreat so we can nail that down?
Because we're already at our meeting.
Yeah. Good point. And I was also thinking, based on some of the feedback in email this week too, that maybe one of the main topics of our retreat, in the past, we can use it for a variety of things for a retreat. And when I say retreat, it's more about like a brainstorming wrap up end of year type of thing. So one thing that we always typically do is just start kind of brainstorming ideas and thoughts we want to do for next year's recommendations. But I think that communications as a whole would be another great topic for us to just map out, nail down, really kind of lay out stuff during that retreat, if that's of interest to you.
Is it the retreat like a weekend?
No, it's like
Yeah.
a couple hours.
Define a retreat.
Last week, I like one day.
Pina
So it's like a
colada.
I like to do a full 3
3
hours. I try to plan like a 5 to 8-ish, 6 to 8.
Order food, there's no shower, there's food, so it's.
Our definitions of retreats are a little different.
Then it makes sure, I'm like, wow, where are we gonna go? They're like, no, we're gonna go to the short minute. Like, that's the meeting. But we're gonna make it, I try to make it fun. I find to make it fun, do a little bit different than what we do here, but also get some business done. So anyway, let me look at a calendar real quick. So maybe we can do that. Where's my calendar? So the 22nd is our, obviously, resource fair, so we really need to plan, and this also can be during the week, it does not need to be a weekend, and that's some kind of stuff. It also could be on another Monday, on a Monday evening. Tends to work well for people kind of already blocked the time off, so, I'm looking at, what things are going on. When's Father's Day? 14th. So I'd recommend like the 8th or the 15th. Far enough away from our other meetings. The 8th or the 14th, sorry, 8th or the 15th of May. Oh. We usually do it out. Can we send out a poll or something? Okay. We'll put down the 8th or the 14th and expect a poll. Make the 15th. I will do the Monday. I can't read today apparently, so the Monday, I'll send out a poll.
Okay. Are you done?
Yeah, I'm done. Does anyone else have any more questions?
So you're gonna send down the sign.
Yes.
Anything?
Nothing really new to change your budget except for some of the things we talked about. Sounds like this big truck play date is paid for, done by, all right? But that's not on the table any longer. Did we do anything about interpreters yet for the resource there?
15th be paid.
We,
Outside of FCPS? Interpreters?
It would come out of your budget if we got you guys to do it. Or we could, we may have some volunteers to be able to. We need to send, what we'd like to do is send out kind of something, another notice though, to say, if you need an interpreter, could you let us know? So we should try to at least preempt. They don't have to have tickets to come, but maybe, some sort of like event type, I don't know, Google Forms, where we could just kind of remind people if they're coming and they need an interpreter.
I like that because there might be other languages other than Spanish that we can accommodate.
Yeah, sign language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of French in my building, yeah.
Really?
Well, I mean, just let me know because,
Yeah.
I mean, I have money to spend
Right now.
So we don't have some for right now, so just let me know.
I think the way that I explained it, if they go above and beyond their normal hours.
Yeah, I
was gonna say where the money's coming from.
She said that
I
out
never
loud.
thought it was so hard to spend money, but it is.
Right?
It's pretty difficult.
Okay. I'll just put some all together and take a break from it. We haven't really discussed it, so we probably should. And also keep in mind, our budget goes through September 30th. So if we want to have like a back to school type thing with a speaker and we want to plan for it either for September, knowing we're running out of time this year, as long as we have them speak before the end of September, we can figure that out. We all have some ideas. Another way to spend budgets, what would be less? That's all in our,
I think we're somewhere around $900, but. So,
all right, please set up a call for us and Rachel actually, because we might be able to coordinate, we might have a list of other things, and you've got a lot of stuff that's been coming up, but you
Again, I
guys,
have money to
other
spend,
ideas
so.
I think you do, so.
Or another thought with the intention form for interpreters, putting a time frame, breaking it up by hour of when they intend to go, that could save us some money.
And then to jump us forward, since we're in a rush of time, old business, the first bullet, Drew's not here, he would have been the update for that, correct?
No, he hasn't, he didn't send anything.
Okay, so that jumps to cameras in classrooms, which everyone heard back from Marco here, he pretty much nailed all my updates with that also. I'm really glad he did show up, and it's obviously front and center on their minds, so that was the update for that. So we can hop right on through old business as far as I'm concerned. Unless someone has any other questions about cameras.
Is the bill that you said passed in the House, is that just for specialized programs? Like, what was the language?
It's called self-enclosed, but classrooms the
So it's like the whole overview of education. Okay.
No, when it says self-enclosed classrooms, they're using the terminology to lock down just specifically communication, struggle, like,
Okay.
our
That's what I
expression
thought.
programs or whatever other. Right, but it wouldn't just be any specialized, it's still very specific.
Communication.
Yeah, it's mostly focused on communication needs. 'Cause the whole point here is, and I always try and point it out heavily when I advocate, because I don't think it gets spoken enough in the bill and at the state level, is that to me, it's a component of faith. I don't believe that my child is provided the same security a neurotypical child is provided. Because a neurotypical child has that voice. So if something happens to them at school, which one, it's a defense mechanism in itself, you don't tend to abuse a child that can go to a teacher and tell what happened, or a principal, or their parent when they get home. And if they do, they have a voice that can protect them from that by, my child does not have that voice, therefore he's not provided the same protection in my mind in school as his neurotypical peers. And so I think that's the idea of the self-contained classroom.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is communication difficult. And every county calls it different things. There's also, for anybody that wants, potentially, I think it's upcoming, it might have been this week, but I think it's a week from now, there's like a ball for that benefits the funding for advocacy towards special needs. Michelle Guyton is the delegate, and that's been backing the bill for many years, and Roy Scott is the other parent advocate that's been working with Michelle Guyton to get this passed, and they're having an event that we look out to have one of these up, but there's ways to donate.
Any other questions about that before we move on to new business? Okay. New business, comments from parent members. I'll kick us off. I have two. First, Kara, you had put out an email. This is more about like business things here, but you had put out an email by asking about if anybody else wanted to step up to be secretary, and no one responded. So is that still something that you want help with?
I actually was thinking what would be helpful is if someone who thinks they may be interested to take over next year, they could start shadowing me for the rest of this year.
I think it is.
You're in.
Yeah, I'll shout.
You're in.
I wouldn't want to take over right now.
Officially, he would have to be voted in next year, but he is volunteering.
We approve the shadowing.
Thank you. I got this job.
And then just a second thing to go back to what we were talking about when Dr. Dyson and Dr. Marco were here about recruiting new teachers, and then we didn't really talk about the retaining piece. And so just living in both lands, the part that has to do with the paperwork that comes with special education that general educators don't have to do, but yet you're given the same amount of planning time in general, and then it doesn't account for the fact that if there's an emergency or a crisis with the student that you case manage, you are pulled and you are not getting your time as the others do. So I find that something to help with retention, just from personally speaking, because we can't always give those bonuses or the extra money, is finding ways within the schedule that, especially for specialized programs, they receive a different PD or don't get that PD, or they are part of the team meetings or whatever it is here in Frederick County. I know I'm using my Montgomery County lingo, but after 28 years, it's like stuck. Other opportunities so they get that time. And then when somebody is new, I don't know what the training is like, but having somebody else that is their mentor in the building to look over the paperwork, to guide them through, because a good IEP takes hours to write. And just that is a way to help with the retention, because I don't think that programs really prepare I call them kids, the kids coming out of college, for what a world of paperwork as a special educator looks like. And there needs to be something that, in order, if you're going to say, and you as a special educator get all this additional work on your plate, there needs to be something we're giving in return so they don't feel abused. Those were my parent comments.
I got a few.
I'm gonna send me your notes. I'm being dead serious. I know you have it all in there. I'm gonna capture what I can. But you
Yeah,
can send it
eventually.
out.
Yeah, I will. I'll be happy to do that because I got a lot to say. I'm so glad you're sitting next to me. Because I know that you've been at Blue Heron Elementary School recently, and that's actually what I'm going to address this evening. And I'm sure everybody in this attendance is aware, has dealt with it, has been there, spoke with people, had meetings, but I would like to go further because you know me. Recently, concerns have been raised from students, staff, and parents from Blue Heron Elementary School. During the week of March 20th, 2 incidents occurred at Blue Heron Elementary School, and the Blue Heron community's reactions to these incidents were shared publicly on Facebook. I have a whole stack of the Facebook posts, but I'll spare you reading each and every individual one. However, I will read the initial. Over the last few days, the author has become aware of disturbing incidences at Blue Heron. Blue Heron is the site of the Pyramid Program for children with emotional learning disabilities. The author was aware students in general education classes are asked to hold when there is a child experiencing a crisis. This could be any child, not necessarily a Pyramid student. The author did not realize the severity and frequency of these incidents. These holds are happening multiple times a day. The children are told to stay behind a locked door and are unable to move to their next activity. Sometimes they are being quickly ushered behind a locked door so they are not attacked as well. Our children regularly witness violence against staff and teachers, cursing, screaming, pounding on their classroom doors. The teachers and staff are using blue punching pads to protect themselves as children kick and hit them. The fire alarm is pulled so often they no longer evacuate the building. Many of the older students have written letters to the principal and the BOE expressing how much anxiety and fear they have about attending school. The author has seen some of those statements, and it's heartbreaking. Many parents and staff have already written to the superintendent asking for something to be done. So it really, I'm going off script, after hearing Dr. Dyson speak tonight, it was very reassuring to hear some of her experiences with special education, specifically children in pyramid-like programs. So the author encourages that policies need revision, and the DOJ investigation a few years ago created standards for how this behavior can be handled. The author encourages the readers of this Facebook post to please speak to their children, ask them what they have seen and how they feel. All our students deserve to feel safe at school. This issue needs immediate attention. Other parents shared police being at the school, lack of communication with families. I did not realize how pervasive to the students this has become. There is rarely a full day of learning without incident. Inclusion would need a total overhaul in FCPS in order to work. And finally, my child was physically assaulted and had property destroyed today by a pyramid child. I am so upset. I am considering filing a police report, not to get the kid in trouble, but so that changes are made by the county. And I feel as parents, our backs are against the wall, and unfortunately, it may take police reports, media attention, or lawyers to elicit some sort of change to make Blue Heron a safe place for everyone. Those of us in attendance this evening are familiar with the Pyramid Program. It serves students with significant emotional behavioral needs who require intensive special education and therapeutic services in a small group setting. What's occurring at Blue Heron is not a new experience for FCPS regarding the pyramid program. Unfortunately, it appears that history has this disgusting way of repeating itself. I'm sure many here recall that the pyramid program is housed at Lewistown Elementary School. In the school year 2017-2018, the pyramid program had expanded to Spring Ridge Elementary School. On March 29th, 2017, the Frederick News Post article, Spring Ridge Elementary School to get program for special needs students, reported the program had 49 students with projected enrollment of 34 students. Of course, fluctuating numbers were taken into account. It went on to report that Spring Ridge would have about 17 pyramid students, and those students would work in a separate part of the school. However, they would mix with the rest of the student body with direct staff support in some educational settings. Miss Selena DeVore, or DeVore, I'm sorry if I mispronounce her name, you personally know her. She's the then PTA of Spring Ridge, and she had many questions when she found out about the plans to bring the program to the school. She wondered about issues such as safety and how having the program at the school would affect other students. The article does refer that a conversation did take place between Ms. DeVore and Principal Patty Hosfeld regarding Ms. DeVore's concerns. However, the article does not elaborate on specifics to their discussion, only stating that after the discussion, Ms. DeVore said she feels comfortable with the decision. Almost 3 years later, the Frederick News Post reported in its February 26, 2020 article, parents expressed communication concerns after Spring Ridge Elementary incident, where, and I quote, a Spring Ridge pyramid student broke a number of windows at the school, which led to several classes having to be moved or combined while administrators dealt with the problem. The article further reported that central office administration, quote, acknowledged that the broken windows constituted the highest profile incident of several that have raised concerns about safety and behavior at Spring Ridge. The Post's article quoted comments made by Spring Ridge parents, and sadly, their concerns are nearly identical to the current situation Blue Heron faces today. The critical message, we want to work together. We really are begging you guys for your help so we can make this a safe environment for our kids. At the time of this incident, central office administration agreed that there is a, quote, need to focus on special behavioral needs countywide, end quote, and that the quote system recognizes the impact that children struggling with behavioral issues can have on students who are not, end quote. Following this incident, a series of roundtable discussions were scheduled from March through June 2020. That would include sessions on communication, discipline and safety, and family engagement. The article concluded that parents were eager to see if FCPS staff would follow through and were interested in seeing what would come from these action plans. A parent is quoted saying, "I hear your words, but I'm looking for your actions to see that you're following through." Now I have to admit, I was eager to find out how FCPS administration worked with Spring Ridge Gen Ed students, pyramid students, the staff, and the families. However, just shy of 3 weeks after this article being published, the school shut down due to the COVID pandemic on March 13th, 2020. Causing FCPS to solve an unexpected challenge of educating all students expediently and to make that work, which was great. Thank you all. But I wondered, did those scheduled roundtable discussions with the Spring Ridge Elementary School community that were scheduled from March through June 2020 ever happen? Sure, they couldn't happen at an actual roundtable or face-to-face, but what about a virtual roundtable? And if so, what were lessons learned? And what practices could be applied to the present circumstances? Moving forward and advancing the school year 2021 to 2022, the recommended LOU, Linganore Oakdale Urbana Redistricting Information Plan became available. Bullet 2 stated, move the pyramid program from Spring Ridge Elementary School to Blue Heron Elementary School. Which begs the questions. Why was the pyramid program moved out of Spring Ridge Elementary School to Blue Heron Elementary School? And what made Blue Heron a more suitable location for the pyramid program? I'd like to thank Mr. Keller for his prompt responses to the CCAC co-chairs and to the committee yesterday morning. Thank you. One of your answers provided the committee with information regarding 22-23 restraint data, elaborating that the majority of elementary students that had required restraint are in our pyramid program, where we continue to provide ongoing weekly central office support for the program, as well as problem solving for individual student needs. The major patterns that have emerged are students running out into busy streets with oncoming traffic, as well as intensive physical aggression towards staff or peers. Students running out into busy streets with oncoming traffic. That's really heartbreaking to read. And what's even more heartbreaking is seeing it in real time. As a resident in the Oakdale district, I witnessed pyramid students in crisis eloping from Blue Heron's property, others darting into the street. Another time I witnessed a student running across the street and entering private residential property, doing significant damage to the private property while aggressively going after staffers. I'd like to take a moment to contemplate a day in the life of the staff who care for students in pyramid and pyramid-like programs. Wisconsin's IDEA Complaint Decision 19-053 report shows that staff experience students throwing rocks at them, lunge at the staff, kicking, slapping, punching, and crawling on the floors, suffer from acts of physical aggression towards staff, exhibit unexpected behaviors that could lead to unsafe aggression towards staff or running from the building, elope from the building, and run into the road. Again, these experiences took place in Wisconsin while the state was dealing with its own cases of student seclusion and restraint. My intended priorities this evening is advocating and raising awareness for the pyramid students. But another priority that cannot be ignored is the staff who care for these students. All pyramid staff serve a specific role within FCPS. The January 19th, 2023 board work session notes highlight a specific focus for the central critical need for behavioral specialists. However, especially at this present time, all pyramid staff roles are essential, and the need for these roles continues to exist. As students' needs evolve, the types of support provided to students need to evolve. As student and staff needs to continue to evolve, the need to lift up these roles have become even more essential. In an email notice to Blue Heron Elementary Community 32323, it was communicated that a team of central leaders is partnering with school leaders and additional steps will be taken in the coming weeks. Now, you know I'm sarcastic, you know I'm cynical, you know I'm bitter. So I gotta beg you to excuse me for my bluntness. But leadership isn't there every day. They're not directly working with, chasing after, and protecting pyramid students from harming themselves, harming gen ed students, while all having to live with the expectation that they are their personal bodyguards as well as the rest of the school's staff and students, while protecting themselves. All pyramid staff need to be and should be involved working side by side with leadership. All pyramid staff need to be trained in proper emergency restraint. All not just Ukeru. When a student in crisis is running into traffic, what's the pyramid staffer gonna say? Stop, don't, come back. Training and certifying only certain staff members need to be revised to all applicable, especially in programs such as Pyramid. Maybe a starting point could be taking an excerpt from 2020 history by scheduling a series of roundtable discussions from April through however long it takes, that it would include sessions on communication, discipline, and safety and family engagement. It's acknowledged that FCPS is working diligently to take the necessary steps in accordance with the DOJ findings, as well as emphasizing the importance of hiring qualified and capable staff such as behavioral specialists, as mentioned throughout BOE briefings and our own committee meetings. There's gratitude for taking prompt and corrective actions, both for Pyramid students and Pyramid staff. However, instead of being reactive, can we please work together proactively? I started this conversation speaking as a parent and not a member of CCAC, but I'm requesting that CCAC come together on these issues, the Pyramid program, or students with significant emotional behavioral needs who require intensive special education and therapeutic services work with our directors, advocating for appropriate additional resources and support to assist improving conditions for Pyramid or Pyramid-like students and Pyramid-like staff members. Through honest and transparent communication that these students may have the proper LRE and education in order to be successful. Furthermore, my request, should CCAC, agree, is the committee's participation in the development or drafting of action plans, updates, and their implementations. Thank you.
Just a quick question. Can you tell me what part, like, when did you stop reading the Facebook posts and when you kind of took over with your own lost track? If you could just like to the end of the Facebook post.
The big post, I stopped at this issue. Sorry, my mouth is dry. This issue needs immediate attention. And then I highlighted quotes. And the final one I said was, I feel as parents our backs are against the wall. You're welcome.
Troy, can I ask a question? Is Pyramid only at Blue Heron for elementary school, or are there other programs throughout?
So at elementary, it is at Blue Heron and Lewistown. But so I will say that coming into this, I helped staff Blue Heron when I became the director here. And we are taking necessary actions based on my experience as a professional. There will no longer be 5 classrooms in a building any longer. That is something that we're working on now, so that moving forward, there is a concentration of expertise of staff, but less students, so that some of the issues that we have dealt with at Blue Heron will no longer occur. And there's a multitude of other things I'm happy to share with.
Where are the other students going to go?
They're going to go to other schools as it's communicated first with those parents, and then it will be communicated with the community.
Is that just Pyramid or Expressions?
For now, it's Pyramid. And of course, with the audit coming back, I think that Lynn and I are very much on the same page that we want to continue to have programs, but you have to have continuums on both sides. More co-teaching opportunities, more opportunities within your home school, and then for students that need intensive supports, more specialized programs.
I don't have a question for you, but we have 5 minutes left, so we need to either.
I'd like to make a motion to extend the meeting by 15 minutes.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor? Thank you. Any more parent comments? Parent member comments?
Thank you for letting me monopolize that time.
Yeah, I know. Good comment. I'm gonna follow that. One is, what I was gonna say, as part of my updates. I don't know if I've shared this in the past, but obviously Frederick County was part of the initial DOJ, and so we already had restraint and seclusion here, but the state has been, obviously it became a state law to change that, so there's no more seclusion across the state. And so there was a committee put together, I think, last fall to help build the parameters around the guidelines and processes for restraint and seclusion across the state. So I was part of that committee. And tomorrow it will all be shared at the MSDE. So we're publishing the new regulation with the guides and guidelines and everything tomorrow. And so it's scheduled for tomorrow at 2:30 at the state board. If I'll be there, just I'll take notes and share whatever I get out of that. But it was a good working session, a well-rounded group of people. I think were in attendance, everyone from parent representation, some schools, non-public schools that already had eliminated those practices and what they had done to manage. I think there's always concerns about just shutting everything down. And so it will roll out across the board, and if any tweaks are different than what FCPS has already done, there might be a couple little ones, and they'll obviously update it as well. But it'll roll out statewide. Hopefully they'll approve that tomorrow, so feedback there.
Kara, is this included in student behavior interventions within COMAR?
Yes, it is COMAR 13.08.04.
I got it.
Yeah,
It's in
so
their
it's being
board
covered with
docs.
Dr. Childry, with Mr. Childry tomorrow, state superintendent of schools.
Mhm.
And to answer one of your questions of concern in terms of like telling them to stop, well, no, that would be imminent danger, and a restraint would be appropriate in that case.
Did you,
Sorry.
did you catch my
Yeah.
sarcasm when I
But-
said that? No kidding.
Sure, and I
Yes.
recognize, and this was a lot of the discussion in those meetings was around some concerns of teachers are concerned on when they can and can't, and I think that the guidelines, there's a lot of conversation around providing examples, of course you can't provide an example for every type of situation, and helping define what imminent danger is, and of course, you can't actually define that in every situation, but in those guidelines, you should see some examples and some help try to explain some of that.
I think
so
we
that
need to
teachers-
separate the directors so that they can behave in class.
They're listening. They've got, I don't know. But I think that it's important too. I mean, even going back to some of the cameras in the classroom pieces of it, I think some of the concerns around all of that is going to be, well, I can never restrain them. Well, not if they're not
Well,
in
Kara,
danger, but all of it.
Kara, I'm aware of that. I
Oh,
studied
no, I was
law.
telling the whole group too.
Well, I think if they have questions, they'll ask them for clarification. But I completely understand where you're coming from and what you're speaking to, because I was looking at this law extensively and I was
Yeah,
reading
good.
all the MSDE
Yeah, and the
guidelines
law
and
is-
points
the
and
law is
talking
written.
points, excuse me. And I was also studying our practices as well.
Yeah, so all of that will be updated if the state requires, because the way that the hierarchy goes is the state sets the rules and then FCP will then
Thank you.
adhere or make it.
Look
make it
forward
be
to the
put
comments that you report.
Yeah,
Thank
this
you.
isn't directly to your, this is my own comments, because this is what I.
No, I'm just,
Yeah.
adding to the conversation.
Sure, and what I
Thank
do
you.
like to do too is when I was in, when I first started on this board, just to share with other parents, that I was very, I did not understand a lot of the lingo and the conversations that were going on. So often I will clarify, and I do that because I wish someone had done it for me. So please,
Yeah,
it's not meant
appreciated.
to undermine any of you. If you understand, that's great, but if you don't, I think it's helpful. It was helpful to me. So I will continue to do that going forward. Any other staff comments?
Okay, let's move on to community networks.
I have one comment. I went to the Board of Ed meeting, this was in the email, but just putting out as comments so that we know that it will also get out. This is the Board of Ed meeting at the beginning of March, and we learned about the complaint form, the anonymous complaint form. And forgive me, because I've been known to tune out, so if we had learned about this committee, if we had learned about the form, please forgive me, but I don't remember learning about the anonymous form at all, and I think as a CPAC committee, that's really important for us to know that information. So I think Meg is going to put it out of for communications. You were going to put it somewhere that's accessible, a link wise for parents or anybody else. So just spreading that word. It is when the committee member, when the Board of Ed was trying to get on, they were like, oh, let's find it. It wasn't that easy to find. I think, as Troy said, it's a little bit easier to find. It's still not, for me, it's just not front and center. Just the form itself. There's at the bottom, it says, go here if you want to make a complaint, you go to that page, there's a full page of text. And one of the lines is highlighted that says form. So just so you know, it's easier to find, but it's still not up front and center, so.
May I ask a question to the directors on the same vein? Troy, thank you for that answer yesterday about the forms, and the information that you gave us was very helpful. It was on our phone. But if you go on your PC, how do you access those forms? Can you demonstrate for us from the FCPS website how you can do that?
So the DOJ, and when we provided a cumulative update, we have talked about it. Now, in isolation, I agree, we haven't discussed it. But there's multiple options. So through the complaints process, you could email Mr. Blazik, you can go to the BCBA, or there is a form. If you actually just search restraint complaint, there's many different options. We've actually put it inside throughout our SBS website, but as Linda, you choose that and then you scroll down, and this is where we can make it even more user-friendly. But you can do the hard copy, that's the first option, which is why we even have Dropbox throughout the school. There's the digital form submission, which is the online form, and anybody can access that. You can even do postal mail, or you can email. So they just want it, the DOJ, and we agree, as user-friendly as possible. So any way that somebody wanted to report something, there's those 4 potential options.
You can contact me and I will send you to whoever.
But if you go up to the top and search, if somebody, even if you type in restraint complaint, it pulls up multiple places in which we've embedded it throughout the websites.
Yeah, I just did that and it came up right away, except it asked me, are you sure you didn't mean restaurant complaint?
Yeah, I noticed that.
It really does say that.
Restraint is a word. Apparently, our surgeon does not
And
believe
it's the
that.
second one. That really was very Yeah.
But there's another part where if you want to, where you report bullying and other issues on the parent portal portion, you can find that as well. I noticed when I was looking at all the different search results. Bullying.
Yeah,
there
we go. That's one where you get rid of the Y.
Report bullying.
Also, these forms are linked to the regulation as well. If you go to regulation 444, if you go to this regulation, the forms are also, and you can always go to regulations by going to Board of Education and then policies and regulations.
Where did we go on menu? Oh, I see that.
This little menu
Yep.
right here.
It's a little
Makes me
harder.
gag, what's that?
Where's my new?
Because you're used to it, I know, and you have to really.
Just another tip and trick on that. I find that if you just Google and type in fcps.org and the next word, whatever it is you're thinking about, it'll take you almost right there. Took a long time to figure that out.
Anybody else, community? Because I do, but I'll let everybody else go first.
Go for it, Pat.
Okay, my turn. Okay, first of all, I was at that Board of Ed meeting too, and I just have to say that we looked at each other and said, did you know about that? And I just think that that's something that we should have known about. Okay, second thing. There seems to be a very strange policy. I keep going back to private school things because that's my world now. But there's a policy regarding giving meeting notes and ISPs to a private school. And the parent can give permission, but we were at a meeting the other day where the meeting notes were printed out and they were handed to the parent, because the school couldn't hand it to the private school, even though the parent has given permission. That's the wildest thing I've ever seen in my life. I let my principal take it. Yeah. So anyways, that's just something that's very confusing. I don't understand if a parent gives permission, why it still has to be given to the parent. I'm waiting for meeting notes and an ISP from another meeting that I was at last week, and everything has to be emailed to the parent, and then the parent can give it to me, even though the parent said that it's okay for STMA to have the documents. Okay, you let me know on that one.
It's public comment. Am I supposed to respond every time?
No, I'm just
wanted
gonna.
to just make sure. I was getting that look.
Oh, there is a look coming, hang on. There's another thing that several people have said, there is a 5-day rule. 5-day rule statement. What I don't understand, if that's like the law, why is it now in the meeting notes? And it's like a little form in the meeting notes.
It's been in the meeting notes.
What?
I take the meeting notes. It's been in the meeting notes.
Yeah, I know.
It's not
I
new.
saw my first meeting notes.
No, it's not new, but I think it is, the question might be if it's the law
Why
that
do they
people
ask
get their notes 5 days ahead of time, why do we ask?
Why are we
in the
asking?
meeting, do you want your documents 5 days in advance?
That's what I was getting at. I just thought the fact that they now have a form in the meeting notes, it's kind of silly if that's the law that you have to, that they have to do it 5 days. Well, if the parent says, no, I want it 10 days ahead of time, that would be different, but.
I think it's more if they want to waive the 5 days and giving them permission, but
But
it's.
that's
I
just so
know, I
different.
don't
That
like
just
For
seems
what? Yeah,
really
why?
silly, so, okay, that's another one.
We'll address that. Yeah, we'll put it in.
It probably is a waiver part of it and just an option.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I mean, I have been in cases. People say, no, I don't.
Wow. Let me.
It's part of the
the
House bill requirement that was passed several years ago. It's just the state of Maryland's.
It's compliance.
Well, I just sit there and nod at the parent. Yes, you do want it 5 days ahead, and they always do. Will CCAP be advised of the report from PGC? Or will we have to wait until it's presented to the board? Because I'm looking there.
Yeah, that's something that we'll have to take in consultation with Dr. Martin. As far as who will get to see the draft report prior to it being published to the community.
Okay.
But in the past, yeah, there will be a draft report that Linda and I will review.
How about the survey results?
That will be all published in the report.
Okay. Now let's look. How's the Woodcock Johnson forward distribution going? Because I asked last time about a school getting another copy and they haven't gotten it.
I can follow up.
If you wouldn't mind, they told me they've looked all over and they can't find it anywhere in the school. Middletown Elementary, 5 special ed teachers. Yes, and the very last thing, when I was, you'll all enjoy this, when I was at this one ISP meeting the other day, the case manager did talk to the parent about all the documentation that they should have gotten 5 days ahead of time. And when she paused, they said, excuse me, did that include the CCAP document? And that case manager said, what's CCAP? And the program assistant said, she did get a copy. I sent it to her and I said, can you give one to the case manager, please?
Well, we're getting out there, baby.
Yeah.
Times are changing.
That's all I had to say.
Okay, moving on to FCPS staff members.
I had solicited a handful of my peers to give you questions for today's meeting, Dr. Dyson. and just got one response. I will continue to work to make sure my people know who CCAP is.
Thank you.
And that's what represented every opportunity. So I'll continue, that's all the comment I have.
Partners for Success.
Do we need another 15?
I can speak really, really fast.
But we
Yeah,
also.
we still have
There's like
four
very,
minutes. Right. They'll just go. and we'll be done. We'll go fast.
We have 4 minutes left.
Okay, I will go super, super fast. I am working on the transition preparedness, not just for when you turn 18 or when you graduate out 21, but also just giving the information to start. Starting parents when they're in kindergarten, I'm working closely with the staff members who are in charge of the transition part of things. I will be working with you. We partnered with the Parents Place of Maryland to start a quarterly, we've named it kind of the art of effective communication. This will help parents and staff members communicate effectively, i.e. the title. So we are hoping to get that going in May. We got, a few more of the mental health webinars with NIMH coming up, virtual IEP process coming up, IEP process of Butterfly Ridge coming up, and also speaking to the private school principals Friday about resources available in the community. So I'm hoping they will push that out to your families a little bit more. So.
Wait, when is this again?
I'm speaking to them Friday. So Monday, ask them for that information.
Oh, I will.
They should have it. Camps, everything like that.
My
Monday.
school was invited?
Your school was invited. I don't know if they accepted, but I'm hoping.
Oh, I'll find out.
I'm hoping. And then, of course, support group evenings are open to staff members too, as well if you have a student with special ed needs. That you're more than welcome. That's it.
Board of Education comments, Mr.
Just thank you for allowing me to be here. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm happy that David asked me if I would fill in for him while he was at his conference today. This is, whether you believe it or not, this is one of the best committees. I enjoy coming to these committee meetings because you folks are passionate. You come, you participate, speak, you advocate. So I appreciate all the work that you do on behalf of the Board of Education. I mean, that's what you're here for, is to advocate and share your thoughts, feelings, solutions. And I appreciate that. So I really appreciate all of your all's hard work. You do have a very strong advocate in Mr. Bass as your representative on the Board of Education. I'm sure you already know that. So he's a great advocate on the board, and we have numerous discussions. I'm sure you know we're obviously with the audit coming up, everything that's going on with Blue Heron, and all of our other programs as well, the cameras. There is a hyper focus on special education, and we discuss it often. It's important. It's something that once the audit's over, it's not going to cool. We're going to have a lot of work to do, and we're going to rely a lot upon you. I appreciate your comments about making sure that you guys, it sounds like occasionally we fail and we don't keep you in the loop. There's this division between the audit and CCAC and the Special Education Task Force and all that. And I think, this committee has been up and running and doing a fantastic job for a number of years. And it's important that we keep you guys fully in the loop. And I'll do everything I can to make sure that happens. So thank you for everything that you do.
Is the next meeting the 5th? The next board meeting the 5th?
The next board meeting is not till April 19th.
And will you be discussing the budget on the 19th? Like, if you wanted to come advocate for
we will be having some preliminary discussions about the budget we will have just found out that the first, I think the presentation to the county council's the 18th is the night before. So we'll have just found out, but that's going to be the primary thing on our agenda on the 19th. So on the 18th, yeah, I would encourage you on the 18th, you could advocate at, at county council. And then, of course, come and advocate on the 19th as well.
I know we're past our time that we voted for. Are there any questions? I'm certain that everyone's had an opportunity to review the director's comments. Any questions? We're done. I mean, we, the directors, were done providing the comments.
All in favor?
Aye.